Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the Ad Race podcast. I'm Fayola Douglas and I'm joined by Shanice Hoo Mills, a visionary communications strategist, speaker and entrepreneur shaping how culture drives brand influence. As a founder and CEO of Kallure, a boutique PR consultancy at the intersection of culture, strategy and storytelling, Shanice partners with purpose-led brands to unlock global impact through culturally intelligent strategy, bold campaigns and community-led experiences. Career-spanning Grayling, Atomic PR, Vodafone, City and grassroots platforms like Grounded Live, Link Up TV, Shanice brings together corporate expertise, entrepreneurial vision and cultural insight. She's passionate about helping brands move beyond visibility to build influence and clarity, authenticity and lasting impact. Welcome, Shanice.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. So we're going to go back to the beginning and talk about your time at university or your education. So I know that you studied performance, drama, theatre with journalism, news and media. Sounds like a really interesting mix. Did you always know that you wanted to go on from that into a career in communications?
Absolutely not. Funny enough, I'll give you some background. I actually started university studying fashion and the arts and I dropped out. So I went to work and then I couldn't make up my mind.
Yeah.
Because I was somebody who was very, I would say super creative, but also very intellectual. So I liked to think and have difficult conversations. And at first, when I did my degree, I couldn't decide. And so I thought, let me do a combination and see over the next 3 years kind of how that shapes and how I develop. And then I had this like vision that I was going to be this superstar singer. But again, I kind of got privy to the entertainment world, entertainment business, and I didn't really like what was going on and what I was seeing. So I thought, okay, maybe this isn't necessarily the industry for me. And then I thought I'm going to become an editor one day, maybe Vogue. So I was completely like on a roller coaster.
Yeah.
And then I started to do like a lot of internships at like magazines. I wouldn't say I knew I was going to go into comms, not at all.
But it sounds like you had a lot of vision. Like you weren't really focused on one particular thing, but it seems like some young people, they don't even know the all the different careers that are out there and those different avenues that those different skill sets can really take you in. But it seems like you had like a lot of experiences, like going into a lot of different organisations, businesses, and did that help you to really decide what you wanted to do?
You know, I would say yes, and I would also say no. I would say yes because it kind of helped me with my like life experience, and I was really exposed from young. I started working from young. I was somebody who was quite outside from young, and I would say like I grew up quite quickly. And so being in those different various environments kind of exposed me to many different things. And I think through that, I was like, how can I channel this and where is it that I really want to go in terms of my career? Because let's be honest, the careers advice that they were providing within school, college, it wasn't the best. And so by the time I got to university, I was a little bit confused, but I just knew I had passion. And I was always an advocate. I was always speaking up on things or trying to amplify other people. For example, when I was at uni, I sat on the journalism board, for example. And so like I used to represent, my fellow peers and have open discussions with our lecturers and how we think things should be. And so I've always been kind of like forward thinking in that sense. So in terms of like going back to your question, I feel like it was a combination, but I feel like life kind of threw me into the direction of comms. Because it was more of a personal journey that I went on that led me into my career.
Do you ever wish you went another route with your education? I know you said that you started off doing fashion and then you switched courses, so there was a bit of uncertainty about what you wanted to do. Do you ever wish that it had gone differently, that maybe you'd known from the start what you wanted to study, or that you'd carried on and studied fashion instead? Like, do you How do you feel
In
about it now?
order. I always do, because, you know, like some of my friends who I started off with, they've gone on to be amazing. They've worked for some of the biggest luxury brands in the world. Fashion isn't an easy world to conquer, especially if you want to go down the
No.
designing route. There's a lot of hoops you have to go through, and a lot of circles you have to infiltrate, to really kind of progress, I feel, within the fashion world. So I didn't have that desire, I think, in my eyes, for fashion to be like, okay, I want to actually pursue this. I always loved doing it. So I would be at home, I would alter my outfits. I'd always be out of the box thinking, super creative, have a sewing machine. Oh, I'm going to cut up my top. I don't like it like that. But that was something that I did for me, what I enjoyed doing as like creative expression. To say I'm going to now develop a whole line, like, you know, I feel like designers don't get enough credit. The amount of work that goes into kind of just even constructing
Yeah.
a whole collection, it's not easy. So for me, I don't feel like I had that level of discipline and commitment and desire for fashion. I loved it, I enjoyed it, I saw it as an addition of like expression, but I don't sit here like, oh, I wish that I went down the fashion route. Not at all. I think my only regret, if I have any, is I should have gone abroad. Definitely, before I became a mom, I feel like I should have studied abroad. There was an opportunity at university where we could have done like an exchange, so we went away for the year. But again, growing up, you know, culturally, my background, my heritage is Jamaican, and it was always kind of like instilled in me, be safe, why you want to go down there and do that, and you know, so I was kind of like fearmongered to like, why would you want to go live abroad? You don't know, they might, you know, kidnap you. So I was always a bit apprehensive. Okay, maybe it's not for me, maybe I shouldn't go study abroad. But everybody, okay, look, the horror stories are like, you know, 2 out of 10 horror stories, people who go living abroad and something's happened. But most people who I've spoken to, who took that time to kind of develop in their careers, who went away and worked abroad, they have such a different perspective. And I feel like that's my biggest regret. I feel like UK has a culture, an atmosphere where they want you to play small. And I think that is something I've always kind of struggled in my career, in my life, whether it was the education system, whether it was going to uni, or whether it was actually working for somebody. I've always been made to feel I'm too much. You know, and again, going back to that point of kind of fitting in this box and this mold of what people want you to be, it was like, okay, let me just go down the conventional route, traditional route, make my family proud. I was the first in my siblings to go university, so I was just like, okay, let me just stick this out because I know I'm making them proud. And a lot of my decisions are kind of based on pleasing other people instead of myself, because in reality, I should have gone and, you know, abroad for uni, but I let the voices of my mom and, you know, my aunts or whoever was advising me at the time to be like, no, don't go there, you don't know what will happen to you. So I led in fear instead of just really being confident in who I was. And I think that, again, UK just has that culture, because when I speak to other people, especially like Americans or, you know, people in Europe, France, for example, like a few of my friends that grew up in France, you know, they've got a different perspective. They're completely like open,
Yeah.
confident. Yes, you know, if you have a bravado, that's fine. That's part of you. But here it's like, if you're a bit too much, you're outspoken, you're flair in your character, you're super creative, but also you like to read books. You know, you're esteemed like, oh my gosh, this person, she's just too much. And I was always kind of made to feel like that. So I would push down the different elements of me, the super creative side, you know, the smart side. Maybe I'm doing too much, let me dim down my light. And I've done that for such a long time. So I'd say, if out of all my, you know, if I want to look at and think about regrets, that's my biggest regret, is just like, I should have just gone abroad, definitely traveled more, studied abroad, and I should have not been fairmongered into go down this route because that's what everybody thinks will be good for me.
Yeah, I think it's so difficult when you're doing something as the first. So, like you're saying, within your family, you're the first person to go to university, and then there's that bit of added pressure, but also what you've seen is, or what you're being told is, this more traditional path, and you could have gone outside of that. But it's hard sometimes to make those decisions for yourself when you're still kind of looking to people for their input, but you're doing something as the first person, so they don't have that experience to draw on to be able to tell you if it really is a good option or not.
Yeah.
I think that's really really important. Like, so how did that feel, even the fact that you went to university and were doing all of that as the first, like, was that something that you always knew that you wanted to do, that you wanted to carry on with your studies, or were you tempted just to work, seeing as you were already working from a young age?
You know what? I think for me it was, for myself more than anybody. I wanted to go uni for me. I've always been like super ambitious, and I grew up in an environment, growing up in Brixton in the 90s, as you can imagine, and we're on the cusp. There was a lot of things. I always say I was on the cusp of the technology revolution, because we were the last, free generation, because we still knocked at each other's doors and we still hung around and we actually had conversations. So for me, like, growing up in that environment and seeing many things, a lot of trauma, a lot of sad stories, people that could have been, the potential of what could have been. I think for me, I luckily was raised by my grandparents who instilled fear of God in me. So no matter how much I may have went into the world, they always brought it back. And I think for me, being in that environment, I just always wanted more for myself, to know, like, seeing my parents' journey, my dad coming here from Jamaica, like his journey and the things that I've seen growing up. I think for me it was like a ball post. Like, I have to succeed, I have to get out, I don't want to be another statistic. This is what I want to do, and this is, and no matter how hard it is, because like I said, I went UCA first, for fashion and art, dropped out because, like you said, being the first of doing something, you don't necessarily have the support. And I look back now, I used to be like really begrudgeful and angry, especially with my parents, at the fact that, I just felt like I didn't get the support that I needed. And, I'd see my peers whose dads like come driving them to uni and doing this and doing that, and I just never had that support. So I dropped out and I went to work. But I said to myself, okay, I'm going to go to work to get stability, but I'm going to go back and get my degree. And that was something I always said to myself. Now, if you ask me now, like, was it worth going to university? That's another question. That's another. But at the time, it installed a lot of discipline in me. I learned a lot. I grew a lot. And uni opened up my mind. Like, college opened up my mind, and because I decided to like come out of my area. So when everybody was going like SFX or Lambeth College or Kingston, I decided, no, I'm not going to any of these colleges. I'm gonna jump and go completely the opposite. I went West London, and I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna start fresh. And see how it goes. And when I went there, I met people from the complete opposite tracks of life as myself, and formed brilliant relationships. And from there, it opened up my mind. I was just like, okay, there's more to life than Brixtonia. And then I went to university, and I met even more like really diverse and different people, and people that came from Germany to study, and France, and all these different places in the world. And I was just like, okay, like, there's a big world out there. And from there, I've just always been interested. I was always interested in anthropology, so I was always interested in the study of humankind and cultures and how different we are, but yet we're all the same, and this whole idea of race. So I think for me, it kind of sent me down that web, going to uni. I knew it was something I always wanted to do because of the exposure that I got in college. I knew that uni must be like a 2.0 version of college, so surely I must learn something here. So yeah, it was more of like a personal thing for me. And like I said, growing up and seeing a lot of things and seeing a lot of peers, like, teenage pregnancies. And don't get me wrong, it's not the end all and be all if you have kids young. Of course, at the time, it feels like your world is crumbling. But when you look back and you overcome those challenges, for me, it's like I didn't want to make those mistakes. I wanted to go on a journey where I could build myself and gain the knowledge and the insight that I need to kind of figure out what the next steps of my career look like.
Yeah, I think you had a little bit of a cheat code there, maybe with going to college outside of your area, and maybe for people who aren't necessarily looking to go into university, that could be something they could think about, because by putting yourself out there, I guess you weren't surrounded by the same people you went to school with or saw for however many years before. It's a totally new environment, which a lot of people only get when they go to university. Like for me, I went to my sixth form, so it was everyone from school was still there. Yeah. and it was still in the same classrooms, the same teachers. It kind of all felt really the same, but yeah, if you go to a totally new area, I think maybe it might even be more difficult at that younger age. Like at university, you are, I guess, more of yourself. You're more mature.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I can imagine that was a crazy
It
experience.
was,
Or
but I've always been somebody. I don't know. I've always been fearless, but I didn't realize that. Apparently, I
yeah,
found out later on in life, yeah, I'm really fearless. But I'm just like super fearless. I'm like, come on, guys, let's just try it. Let's see what happens. Like, I'll be zip lining down a mountain, and people are like, why are you doing that? And I'm just, that's the type of person I am. So, there we are.
yeah. I love that. So early on in your career, you had quite a corporate start to your career. You worked at Vodafone, I think was one of the first places. Like, how did you find that time in your career kind of starting out?
It's funny because no one really knows this part of my career. Before Vodafone, I actually worked for an oil engineering company. And it was called AMEC before it got taken over by Foster Wheeler. But they were based in Old Street, and this was the time before I had finished university, I ended up getting this full-time job. And I was the only woman of color, like on my floor. Like you can just imagine an oil engineering company, predominantly white, predominantly middle-aged guys. And I think that was my first like set stone of working in a corporate space. So I always have to like talk about that because before Vodafone, before Citibank, before any of those places, I got experience there and I realized how the corporate world kind of operated from the jump. In
Yeah.
terms of my communications career, of course, that was different because when I was at AMEC, I was working in commercial. So it's much more working along like HR and finance is the area that I sat in. So then to jump over into communications and going over to like Vodafone, it was really refreshing because Vodafone and Citibank, I would definitely say, are two of the most diverse corporations I've ever worked for. Just in terms of just as an organization, as a business, you saw all different colors, creeds, backgrounds. Citibank a lot more diverse than Vodafone, but Vodafone was very rich in its diversity. Even though my direct team might not necessarily you'd consider being diverse, the organization as a whole I felt was really diverse. So for me, going into that environment, I felt, of course, we face, you face different kind of feelings and adversaries and little remarks and behaviors. And I call it the silo culture that nobody talks about, but we know it goes on within the corporate space. I felt I was able to navigate that space a lot more freely and more comfortably because I recognized people who looked like me. And I think that is
Yeah.
what is really important. One thing I always say is that if you can't see yourself in anything, you're going to have difficulty to really understand or even have a conversation because you don't understand that person even on a cultural level. So I think for me, going to Vodafone and navigating that space, it was really refreshing in my career because it allowed me to see the opportunity that was potentially there for me to kind of progress within this space.
They definitely say if there's more diversity within an organisation and the people that work there, I guess, feel more of a sense of a belonging and community, then they have like a lower rate of staff turnover. And of course, if people are happy to stay somewhere longer, there's more progression for them within that business. But also, I guess, like it helps the business progress if you've got people who will stay there for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Then it helps the company culture and it just helps the business succeed, I guess. So it seems like Vodafone were doing a lot in that respect.
No, definitely,
Yeah, and Citibank.
yeah, no, definitely, they definitely was, and obviously I was at Vodafone at the time. Well, it wasn't obvious, but I was at Vodafone at the time where they were actually one of the first companies to bring in their policy for paternal rights and maternity rights. They were one of the first
Yeah.
companies that gave fathers actual paternity leave, to be able to go home and have that time with their new child. And I admired that as an organization because not a lot of the corporates were doing that. So being in that environment again, like it gave me a lot of exposure, a lot of understanding about how markets work, how the industry works, the different kind of mechanisms in an organization. And so fundamentally, it really helped develop my career, like develop me as a professional and in my career.
So how did you go about securing those early roles? Did you have contacts within the businesses? Were you just applying through the usual methods? Did you work with a recruiter? Like, how did you work on things?
So, Citibank or Vodafone or both.
Both.
So with Citibank, with Citibank, this is it. I will always big up Citibank because they were the ones that opened the door of my career. So with Citibank, I was mentored by a wonderful lady called Jenny Gray. She was head of Citibank EMEA Public Affairs. And I met her through a campaign that I did with the Evening Standard around raising awareness on inner London estates and what that looks like. And I was one of the young people who spearheaded this campaign and brought to attention to the MPs what needs to change in our areas and what that looks like for young people and the next generation coming up. Unbeknownst to me, the editor of the Evening Standard was in the room when I was giving this big talk about what I want to see change. And what I didn't know, there was somebody else there from Citibank. Cut a very long story short, I was then asked to present this proposal of what I would like if we were to gain funding and support within this particular area. And at the time, Jenny contacted the editor and asked, who's that young lady? Like, I want to speak with her. I see potential. I feel she'll have a great career within public affairs and PR. Has she considered that? And this was a time when I was really struggling to get a full-time job. It was so difficult after finishing university, and that's another thing. I don't feel that they do enough for when people graduate. You've got hundreds of thousands of young people coming out of uni with degrees and nowhere to work. So it was just ridiculous. It was a very, very difficult time, and I remember going for interviews and just feeling really, really discouraged. Like, what am I actually doing, and why did I do this degree? Is where I was at in my head. But all I know is I had passion. Somebody who I cared about very deeply had passed away, and I wanted to advocate on what it was that they were trying to do before they passed. So I just put my passion into this, and all that from there, I was then invited to Citibank to meet with Jenny, and she asked to mentor me. And she said, have I ever considered a career in public affairs? She thinks I'll do really good in comms and PR. And I said, I thought, as a joke, I actually thought PR was just for celebrities when they wanted to get in magazines and promote a single. Honestly, I didn't realise to the degree of how important PR and comms is for every single sector and industry. I just thought it was, celebrity, PR, publicist. That's what I always had in my mind. And then she mentored me, and from there she offered me a graduate public affairs role at Citibank. So I went on to work there, but while I was there, I was then introduced to the chairwoman at the time of the Taylor Bennett Foundation. I met her at an event that I was working on for Citibank. If I remember correctly, the British Museum, we were sponsoring something, and I ended up meeting this lady there, and we connected and we chatted and we just hit it off. And again, she turned to Jenny and she said, have you told her about Taylor Bennett? I think she'd be really good for this, that I think she should apply. And so I remember vigorously doing this application. I'm telling you, getting onto Taylor Bennett is no joke. And I remember sitting there going through this application thinking, oh my goodness, this is so much work. But I really want to get onto this program. Because everybody had convinced me that this is a brilliant program and it will really change my life. So while I was on the program, I ended up meeting one of the directors over at Vodafone. And again, we were just chatting. I've got this thing, I can connect. I've got friends of all different age groups. So
yeah, I get it. You can connect with a lot of people, lot of different people. Yeah.
So I just ended up connecting with this lady, lovely lady. And she said, when you finish Taylor Bennett, what's the plan? And I said, I was thinking maybe go back to Citibank, if I was able to go back there. And then she said, I want to offer you a job. And I said, huh? And she offered me a job on the spot for Vodafone. And from there, once I finished the Taylor Bennett Foundation, I had secured my role at Vodafone. And then I went there, was working there. And while I was there, a friend of mine who I actually worked with at City, she reached out to me because she was headhunted for a role at an agency and she felt the role would better suit me. So she's passed me along and she said, I've given your details to the recruiter. Let me know if you want to move forward and I'll let them know. So I said, yeah, definitely XYZ, because again, I was very ambitious, money driven. you know, I was in like graduate roles. The money wasn't fabulous, but when I look back at it now, I was actually on good salary considering I was a graduate. When you look at like the
Yeah.
landscape and the space I was in, and but you know, what can I say? The hardship of having too much ambition, and I remember I ended up doing the interview and I got the job at the agency. But it was a shock to my system working for an agency because it was completely different to working in house. So working in house, an
Yeah.
organization, a lot more support, a lot more structure, and you're not spread so thin across multiple accounts. So, but again, a brilliant experience in the sense that it really helped build my character. It helped, you know, give me exposure to the agency world, how it works, retain all the different kind of, you know, operations they have in place to grow an agency. So I was, you know, really privy to a lot of that. But then while I was at the agency, Vodafone headhunted me back and said, look, would you like to come back? Better role, better money, we'd love to have you back. Because at the time, the head over there, Matt, wonderful guy, he's been in the comms industry for many, many, many years. He turned and said to me, you know, we'd love to have you back. And he kind of indirectly became a mentor. I kind of peer mentored him and he mentored me. So I gave him a perspective from a young person's point of view. And he gave me a perspective from, you know, somebody very senior within the comms industry. And then I went back to work for Vodafone and then the rest was history. So that is pretty much my story of how I got into comms and PR.
That's so interesting. It seems that, like, although you were having some knockbacks, like, you didn't let that totally take over your passion for doing something different, and that I guess you were kind of in the right place at the right time. Like, you were just being you and being passionate about this other cause that was really important to you, and then that was able to be noticed.
No, definitely, I would say so.
Yeah.
I feel like in life, if you are authentically yourself and you
Yeah.
ooze passion in what you do, I think naturally things will open up and align for you. I think in life we're constantly thrown these curveballs, as in terms to stretch our character, and I think sometimes a lot of people get caught up on the curveball itself instead of just understanding it's like part of what needs to happen. Hear me sound like a philosopher, honey. I ain't got it figured out, but
No, but I think you do. I think it's like about putting yourself out there. I mean, not everybody is going to have the same personality as you and be able to easily connect with people from different backgrounds, different ages, be able to do public speaking, like those things, but they'll have different qualities, and that's what they can get noticed for, that really draws to their strengths. But you really done what worked for you, and I guess you weren't doing it on purpose then. It wasn't like a blueprint, like, "Oh, this is what you need to do," but it worked. Like, just putting yourself out there and being
I
you.
was definitely like, put it this way, in the office I had them laughing quite a bit because I was somebody, I was just like, I was very vocal and I was very unafraid, and I think that's what they liked about me. Well, I'd like to think that's what they liked, because they knew that I would be in meetings, for example, and I wouldn't just be like, okay, that's a great idea. I'd question it. I'd be like, is it, but why, why are we doing that, and who are we, and to have somebody quite, you'd say, junior, kind of like questioning the authority, it's like, whoa, this is new for us. You know, usually people are just happy to, you know, do the calendar or create this content without asking questions. But I always asked questions, and I always kind of challenged that, respectfully, of course. But I always was like, okay, why are we doing that? Does that make sense? Kind of thing. And I think from there, that's where I started to realize, especially being at agency, you know, these people think they have brilliant ideas. It's like, who are you talking to? Where did you get this from, honey? No, it's absolutely not. But again, being in that space, I was able to realize, oh, there's the disconnect here, and these people are really like creating things and feeling they're doing wondrous stuff, talking on behalf of like the black community, for example. It's just like, no, honey, who are you consulting? So yeah, I think for me, I learned that that's a power early in my career. How it depends how you use it. I think, you need to know when to speak, when not to speak. Don't overdo it, but know when the time is to speak, and when you do, make sure that you're coming with something substantial that's going to hold weight. And I think that's how I've always navigated my career. Just be unafraid of who I am, be proud of my difference, and don't carry it as I don't want to be a poster kid for nobody's advocacy or campaigns, but I will definitely always speak up to what I feel is right in my heart. And if that means that I might step on a few toes as I do it, that's totally fine. As long as we're all respectful, I feel like it's important to share those indifferences. And I think it's important for individuals to kind of exercise that, because then that's how they develop in their career. And like you said, everybody's got different superpowers. And I think that we should just tap into our superpowers. But I feel like at the same time, the way the world is right now, so driven by social media, personal brand, and being online, I think sometimes everybody kind of gets confused and conflicted with that and feels they have to do what you do, for example, or I need to be like this, but it's like, but that's not who you are, so it's not going to work for you. And I think, again, it's just like, just really just standing true to who you are and what you believe.
So you were rising up the ranks, you worked agencies, you'd been working agency side, but then obviously had already had Vodafone, lots of experience there. Like, how did you then decide that you wanted to create your own company? Like, we've been hearing, obviously, like, you seem like you were showing a lot of leadership qualities your whole time while being in these organisations. You were questioning what they were doing, like, you weren't afraid to speak up. Was that all part of your decision to go it alone?
You know what? Absolutely not. I fell into it accidentally. I had my daughter. So I got pregnant with my daughter while I was at Vodafone. And I remember when I took my maternity leave off, well, at the time I was going to be returning, most of my team were either being made redundant. There was a lot of changes. A few of the markets were getting shut down in Vodafone. There was a lot of different things that was transpiring at that time. And a lot of my team were being made redundant. My boss was going to be leaving. So I just thought, I don't really want to go back somewhere that's going to be completely a shock to my system. I've just had a kid, you know, I've just stepped into this role of motherhood. This is a lot for me. But I didn't want to be standstill. And what I mean by that is do absolutely nothing and just be a mum. Because, again, have relatives, I've got people who I know who have told me those stories where they've taken time out of work and how difficult it's been for them to get back in.
Yeah, like take 5 years out and then people are like, you're starting from zero again, like people don't know who you are, like, yeah.
Exactly. So I just thought, I don't want that. Like, no, thank you. So I started to freelance. I was freelancing. So when I had my daughter, I freelanced. And again, I met this lady through Vodafone, ironically, because we sponsored one of her events and we just hit it off and we had a really great connection. And she asked if I could do some consulting work for her, and so I came and I done a bit of work for her. And then one thing led to the next. I ended up really driving her business and actually looking after quite a few of the different kind of areas of it. And it was while I was there setting up the social capital network for her, I realized, like, everybody kept saying it to me, Shan, why don't you just do this full time? Like, you're really good, you know, you should do it, X, Y, Z. But again, imposter syndrome, self-doubt. I've never run an agency. What business do I have running an agency? And I always thought to myself that, you know, when I'm like 45, 50 and I've accomplished all what I wanted in the career world, I will set up my own business and yada, yada, yada. But that never happened. And I thought, you know what, yeah, why not? And so I'd set it up again, accidentally, off the whim of setting up this program, the Social Capital Network, sponsored by Google. And so again, I was really getting my feet wet, and I learned so much working on that particular project and working for that particular lady. She was the world's first ever network professor. So she specialized in all networks and the power of networks, and she created something called the Simplicity Principle. So I again gained so much insight and knowledge about, you know, networks, the importance of it as a business, kind of the key things that you need to consider, and, you know, whether it's the marketing, the sales, the back end, the operations, how you managing data. It sounds so okay, but it really matters. Like, all of this stuff matters, especially when you're building something. And it hasn't been easy the past 6 years, but I wouldn't change it for the world because I'm here. So
can you tell us about Kallure and what your business does? Okay,
so Kallure, we're actually shifting away from being a 360 agency. So next year is going to be a very, very interesting year for us. We've signed a few things that I can't talk about yet, But next year we're completely shifting more into a consultancy. So currently, we do traditional like PR, comms, strategy, events, brand partnerships, and so forth. But again, after 6 years of doing something, you see what works, what doesn't work, what you're capable of managing, how you want to see the business grow. And I realized it just wasn't substantial for me anymore running the business as a 360 agency. And it's better to kind of partner with other agencies who kind of specialize and have more specialism in, say, one area, for example, like SEO, for example. So in terms of what we do, we provide consultancy across strategy, across campaigns, across events. We help develop founders, their personal brand, what that looks like, their story, their narrative, their positioning. We also help organizations, like if they have a brand, for example, that they would want to launch, we help them with the strategy around that, the rollout. And of course, we can provide traditional services such as like PR, outreach, media, and media training, for example. But it's not the service I really, really push on, because again, as you know, working in like PR comms world, retainer work, it's quite demanding. And so I wanted to find that balance. And so for me at the moment, Kallure's in a nice shift where we're becoming a consultancy information hub where we will provide the assets and the necessary tools for individuals to be able to kind of build their own kind of PR brands and what that looks like. So I'm excited. We're in a weird place. This year has been a lot about grafting, a lot about, as a business, where we position ourselves, what do we care about, what do we want to work on. I've literally tore apart the business this year. So when you ask me about, what's Kallure, what we're doing, it's like we're heading into a completely new chapter, what I'm excited about and I'm ready for. But yeah, we're ultimately a communications consultancy that specializes across different, verticals. But we get the job done. We provide clarity, we provide connection, and we provide community. Because that's one of our biggest things that we're known for, right? Is our community and building communities and ecosystems and what looks like that. For me, I'm big on collaboration. I'm big on partnerships. I love to see my people win. I love to just see people win in general. And so for me, I'm just like, okay, what is it that people always came to Kallure for? Why did they come to us? And one of the big things I kept hearing was community, 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 community. So I'm like, okay, haha. So next year, we're going to see a lot more community stuff. This year, I slowed it down. Like I said, I cancelled all the events for Q3 and Q4. Everything that we had planned, I literally just said, no. And we're going to go back to the drawing board and tear everything apart. And it's been the best thing I've ever done.
Nice. Well, yeah, I first heard of Kallure and met you because I came to one of your events. So I'll be, looking forward to them restarting up in the new year, hopefully. But I guess with a bit of a different vision behind them.
Yeah. Still the foundation still remains. We're all about community, authenticity, storytelling, and building real connections. But I feel like our premise and the direction that we're heading in is going to evolve, and it's going to take us, I'm praying, outside of the UK market. So I'm excited that the direction that we've been shifting in, it's been working, and off the back of it, I've been winning clients. So I feel that it's definitely heading in the right direction.
So, and just another thing, just on, I guess, starting Kallure, like, how was that transition for you from working for somebody else and like working at Vodafone, for instance, to being a CEO and being a founder, being your own boss? Like, how did you find that at first? Like, thinking about 6 years ago, now I feel like you're really settled into that that role, but when it first started?
Do you know what? It's so funny because it's an absolute roller coaster. I think for anybody who starts off their own business, all you care about is the aesthetics of things, right? So it's like you want your logo to be perfect. You want to look like this. This is how you want things to be. And I think over time, one of the things I learned very quickly is that no, Shan, all the boring stuff you keep running away from is actually what's important. So in terms of settling into like being in the beginning, I think for me it was quite difficult because I needed to believe in my own self, if that makes sense. So it's like,
Yeah.
how can I be trying to sell something to other people if I don't entirely believe myself? So I think in the beginning it was a lot of kind of like self mindset, belief, can I do this, up and down, because in the beginning it was like the Sahara Desert, you're not really making money like that. So it's just like, how do you maintain? And I think for me, with anybody that goes into business, that's the biggest thing, is cash flow. Like, how do you maintain this? How do you continue? How do you continue to build and grow? Especially if sometimes there's months where it's amazing, you've got clients, some months it's quiet. How do you kind of work through that? And I think in the beginning that was really, really hard. And I think for me, transitioning from having a boss that you could go to when you had problems to like now it's like, okay, who do I talk to? I've got these issues and I don't know who to talk to. And it was hard sometimes because some of like my closest friends, they've all done well respectively in their careers, but they don't work for their self. So trying to have those conversations with them, they didn't entirely understand. And so I quickly learned in the beginning, it's not about how pretty your logo is and, doing this fancy project. It's actually making sure the back end works and the back end makes sense, and that you're making the right decisions as a leader, especially if you're responsible for other people's like salaries or you're looking after a team, for example. I think that was really hard in the beginning because I tried to run before I walked. So I would definitely say the first 2 years was a lot of trial and error, but it made sense, and I was able to kind of like sustain. And then third year, fourth year was amazing, much better. And then the fifth year was okay, like it's been okay. Like last year was amazing, I'd say. And then like, yeah, this year has been like an absolute emotional roller coaster, to the point I was asking, do I still want to do this anymore? Do I even want to be in this industry anymore, is what I was even asking myself. Because again, going back to what we've discussed previously about the silo culture and just the environment here in the UK, I'm just so like, do I still want to be a part of this circus? So.
But the answer, I guess, has been yes.
Well, yeah.
You come round to it.
The thing is, it's so crazy because you can really love something, but you don't necessarily love the extra stuff of it. Do you get what I mean? So I actually love PR. Like, I love coming up with ideas. I love looking at somebody's brand or their online personality and seeing how I can pull out the right story. How do I shape that? Like, how can I strategically put that person with that person and it makes sense? Or how can they partner together and it will make sense? I love all of that. Like, my brain gets excited. Like, it's just like, yes. But it's just the extra stuff that I can't. I think, it's like the navigating the industry, the circles, the events, having to keep up with the whole bravados online, and oh my gosh, guys, look at me and what I've done, my millions of like accomplishments. I think that is all what I struggle with. And everybody says, Shan, I say all the time, I'd be a millionaire for every time I've heard it. You don't talk enough about what you've done. Because when people actually talk to me and they realize what I've done, they're like, wow, like you've actually done some incredible things. But I'm so like, let's do the work. Going online and talking too much, it's making me feel a bit awkward. I'll be like, oh, so like this is natural to me. You asking me questions, I love this. We can talk all day. But me going and plucking up a camera to be like, hi guys, so. But I know I need to do it, innit? I need to, but I'm going to. And there's all that extra stuff that I can't take, which you have to do when you run your own business. And so I need to pick up my own way, pretty much.
Yeah, I guess it's easy to be like satisfied and happy with your work, but it's the wider landscape that's more of the issue. But also, like, you already know it. You're a PR and you need to PR yourself. Yeah. Like, but you're like, I'm busy working. I don't have time for LinkedIn.
Yeah, and sometimes, I feel like there's a sense of vulnerability as well. Like, you're having to place yourself in a vulnerable space because people connect to true feelings, true stories, things that you've experienced, right? And for you to kind of open that up, how do you make yourself interesting without overspilling and over making yourself overly vulnerable? Because this industry sometimes, especially as a black person or a person of color, it can be very fatiguing. because you're constantly having to put on this mask and constantly having to kind of prove your worth and prove your value and why you deserve to have the respect or be in that space or be there. And even though it is shifting, because there's a lot of wonderful things happening, like UK Black Comms Network, we've got organisations like the Taylor Bennett Foundation and so forth, and you know, PR Moment, Ben's wonderful, like he's really been pushing and trying to like diversify, you know, the voices he has, you know, on board, whether it's the judges for the awards or so forth. So I can see the work he's doing, but again, it can be it's very, you know, exhausting to be in a space like this. And sometimes you question, like, is this really what I've been called to do on earth? And I think that's where I had to like be asking the higher powers, like, listen, if Kallure is what you really want me to be doing, sir, you need to be revealing something to me.
Give me a sign.
I'm about to go follow Nilla and go on that yacht and go shake my ass. So you better just, hi. That's where I was at. So this year, about the whole like industry and navigating this space, and I hear it repeatedly. You know, I've had a few American clients, and they've said to me, you know, Shanice, you're in the wrong market. Like you would do so well in America. Like they wouldn't even question your worth if you said, this is what I charge. It's not gonna batting eyelids. Let me think about this. It's going to be okay. Can you get the work done? All right, here, let's go. But over here, there's these hoops that we don't talk about, but we know they exist, that we have to kind of jump through to make things happen. And I think that is what made me feel like, do I want to do this? There's a number of different things, but it was just kind of like navigating that and being a founder in this space. Sometimes you kind of question, like, am I even a good founder? Like you because you see your peers, right, and you see them, they're doing well, and you start to question yourself, like, am I doing as good as I think I am? Can I be better? Am I doing well enough? What more can I do? Am I doing enough? You start to question so many things. But
yeah, but that's the thing that I think isn't always so necessary, like, but that we do, is that we're always striving for the next thing. Like sometimes there's joy to be found in like what you have going on currently. You know, a lot of people are like, it needs to be big or it needs to be better, but it's like, how much is that going to impact your piece? You know, people, they want to work more, want to have more clients, but actually how's that going to impact their home life? How's that going to impact their stress levels, their health? Like, I think it all plays a part, like, and there's nothing wrong with wanting bigger and better things, but it needs to be a balance.
Definitely.
As
And
well.
and I think that's the journey I've been on this year, has been for so many years. In fact, most of my life, I've been so ambitious and thinking about what next. Does that bring me happiness anymore? And that's what's made me question, do I even want to do this? Because if it's not making me happy, it's not about, you know, the awards. It's not about, you know, working with fancy clients and being able to say you've done this and that. I think for me, can I go home and be at peace and be happy? And that's where I started to question if it's something I want to do. And so I said, you know what? I do love what I do, but I'm going to do the parts that I like doing, and everything else, let's shift away from that, because that no longer serves who I am now. It did at that time because I was in survival mode. I was in a mode of trying to escape where I was and what I was going through at that time on a personal level. And I think that's why I threw myself into becoming a founder, because it was a level of escapism, as well as the fact that others around me encouraged me to do it. But I felt that was my escapism. But I'm no longer that young girl, you know, 6 years ago, who was trying to escape the situation she was in. And, you know, I've developed and I've grown into a woman now, and I know what I like, what I don't like, what I'm willing to tolerate, what I'm willing not to tolerate. And so now I'm in a place of transitioning and packaging that in a way that it can serve everybody, it can serve the community, but then it can also serve me, where I don't lose my authenticity and lose who I am because I have changed. So that's where I've been. It's a weird transition, but this year's been a good, weird transition.
So I know that people and community are both really important to you, and you've been involved with a number of different like programs and initiatives across the years. Like, I know you were principal ambassador for the Social Capital Network. can you tell me a bit about that experience and what attracted you to that program?
I was like the program lead at the time, and what made me get into it was what the Social Capital Network was all about. Was about partnering, let's say, the next generation of leaders from Black and brown communities with C-suite level leaders across politics, media, government, XYZ, right? Corporate. And so we were speaking with Downing Street, we were speaking with Google, and for me, it was really, really important for me to be part of that and to drive it, because growing up, as you know, there was like a particular narrative around leadership, especially around Black leadership. And so for me, it was important to have us in spaces that we feel we weren't seen. And that's why I was part of it, and why I had passion for it, and why, when I was asked, once it had, was set up, could I become an ambassador for it, I chose to do that because I truly believed in what it could do and what it was, what it was doing for these young people's lives, and connecting them and opening those doors with C-suite people who ultimately are the decision makers. Because a lot of young people that are coming into these spaces, they don't have access to C-suite level leaders. They don't have access to the decision makers. And so they don't really, how will you ever know? Unless you speak to these people, how will you ever know that this is a potential for you? And so I think that's where, my passion came from, to be part of it. Because growing up, of course, I knew there were successful people. Like, when people always go, talking about the Black community, like, we don't see anything positive. It's like, where are you looking? Because I can tell you 10 different fantastic Black leaders right now off my head who have done phenomenally well. So it's like, I wanted to kind of break that stigma as well, that narrative that's always kind of being pushed, that we're not in these spaces, or we can't get into these spaces because that it doesn't happen for people like us. And so, yeah, that's why I became part of that particular program, and why I became an ambassador for it.
Nice. And you were also a recipient of the F100 Growth Fund, so that's between Sky and Black Equity organisations.
Yeah, that's correct.
So can you tell me a bit why you think that initiatives like these are important?
Yeah. In terms of the F100 program, Sky and BEO, I think programs like that are very, very important, because for you to really build anything, you need equity, you need money to make those things happen. People move. There's only so much people will volunteer and support you and XYZ, and there's only so far interns can get you. You need to be able to drive money and equity into the ecosystem. And I think programs like that help to drive that equity into Black businesses that are doing well, but they just need that little bit of help to kind of push them forward and get them over that line so that they can profit, that they can grow, and that they can scale. And I think, especially within the UK, one of the biggest problems we face within our community is securing loans, is securing the funding, it's securing the equity. We know there's many different reasons why that is the case. So for me, something like that, the F100, when it became apparent to me, 3 different people sent it to me, by the way, because I wasn't going to apply. The first time I got it, because I'm a little bit, sometimes I'm very, one day I'm super optimistic, and the next day I'm an absolute pessimist who is so real, girl, bye. So it's just you just catch me on what day it is. And the first 2 people who sent it to me, I'm just there's no point applying. I'm not going to get it. What's the point? That was literally where I was at. And then the third person sent it to me, and I was like, 3 is the number of completion in the Bible, so this must be a sign. If a third person has sent this to me, I must apply to this program. And I remember the person sent it to me and said, "Oh, Shan, I think you should apply. This is really good. I think you should go for it." I just thought, okay, why not? So I did it, and then I made it onto the program, and then I was one of the people selected to get funding. But honestly, not just in terms of equity and funding, I gained lifelong friends, I gained peers, other people that are on that journey that I can call up and be like, "Oh, you know what we're going through right now?" They understand my language, we're just sitting across the table holding each other's hands crying because we just understand what we're going through. And so, for me, it was more than just the money. It was the actual support. And Sky have been, and BEO, like BEO, I love them. I really do. You know, they have been so genuine with their efforts to support young black entrepreneurs. And I think it's refreshing to see people are doing things genuinely and genuinely care and want to implement that change. And I can see like Sky have really been pushing, like the work that they've been doing, they really have been pushing and have been really supportive. So for me, I feel like those programs are really important, because not only do they provide equity, they provide you peers, they provide you with community, but then they also help the credibility. Because I'm not joking, when I got that funding, oh my gosh, people were appearing out of the woodwork. I'm telling you, they were coming from left and right. And like, so I was a part of like the Sky campaign recently, like this year. And I'm getting messages from people I haven't spoken to in a long time, and it's nice, but at the same time it helps build that credibility, because they're like, oh, if Sky are recognizing her, then there must be weight in what she does and why she does what she does. And so yeah, it is a nice feeling, and we need more of that, really, to be honest. What I'd love to see, talking it into existence, is programs where they actually follow through kind of the back end after you get the money. Like, what are you doing with the money? How has it... I think there needs to be more. There's a lot of incubators that are around now. You know, we thank God for like organizations like Foundervine and so forth. There's a lot of organizations that provide the incubation, the development, the ideation, getting the money, but then the execution part, I feel there's a miss there. There's a miss there. There's not enough programs kind of facilitating the execution part. And then, you know, somebody who's never got 20 grand in one go, they could squander that. You know, I made some mistakes, and I'm talking from my own personal experience. When I first got the money, you know, let's be honest, I was conned. Yeah, right? Somebody sold me this really wonderful tool, made out like it was going to help me in terms of bringing in leads, business leads, and generating new potential calls for business. And really, what I later found out, it was a white label product that they bought from an American company, put their logo on it, and was upselling it. So I think, had I, you know, had that guidance, that support, that initial kind of like, okay, this is where, because I was clear on where I wanted to place my money, redo the website, fix our marketing, fix our funnels, all of that. And I did use the money for that, but again, it was a loss, and I feel like that was a preventable loss had I had that right kind of support to kind of really take it there. But then I think sometimes they do this to kind of like stretch us and make us develop as leaders or as entrepreneurs. But I think it would be great to like see a program kind of develop the other side, not the beginning, but the kind of other side of what that looks like.
I think it could even be nice, like, you obviously were spending your money wisely. You had a real clear plan of where things were going to be spent. But if there was more guidance on, okay, these are reputable companies, these are people that, you know, there's no reason why they can't have a wider network of resources that they know are useful, or people that you can work with to develop these things that could be useful.
Most definitely.
Versus,
most definitely.
Just to help people through the process.
It's amazing, because I always say we were like the guinea pigs. We were the first, right? So I was in the first, and if you see like year on year the F100 program, the businesses are just phenomenal. Like some of them, I'm like, wow, you know, like you've really seen the growth of the F100 program since it's come into fruition. But it's like I sit down and I am really grateful to be where I am now, because quite a few of the businesses that I started off with on that program, they've all like shut down or dissolved, or they didn't carry on because it was just too hard and they just didn't have the money to like continue. And so when you hear that, it's like, wow, I'm like an anomaly, because I'm still here and I'm still fighting, as much as there's times I want to give up. Because like, listen, everyone makes out like this founder life so amazing. Yes, to some degree it is, but it's not the end all and be all. Like, trust me, there are sleepless nights, you're stressed, you're intense, I've developed psoriasis, honey, over the years. Yeah, like from the level of stress, being a founder, there's many different emotions that you go through. And I think the culture of it online, like this girl boss, you're a founder, hey. But nobody wants to talk about the times where you're sitting in your car crying, thinking, can I continue to do this? Or times where you're feeling so overworked and you're so spread thin that now to come home and be present for your family is even a mental task. So I feel like people should just be more honest and open and transparent about it. I'm not trying to scare people from being a founder, definitely not.
Yeah.
But just really think about this. This is something you have to be committed to. And I think that's what I learned early on. The discipline and the commitment is so necessary if you want to be successful. Because if you think, oh, a couple days here and there, me working on my business is going to do anything, you're going to be very shocked when you find out that's not the case. So I think there's a level of commitment, a level of sacrifice, understanding that you won't see success for the first 5 years of your business. That's the truth. You know, again, we were able to triple profit in our 3rd year, but that again is like an anomaly. It wasn't like that every single year, but we've been able to grow and sustain. Do you get what I mean? So I think it's about having those honest, real conversations and being okay to accept that maybe being a founder entrepreneur isn't for me, but how can I help others that are in that space? Because I have a passion for it, but maybe that's not my walk or what I should be doing. So yeah, I just think, yeah, it's been interesting, the whole journey of like being a founder, being in PR, being in marketing and meeting different people and hearing their stories and their journeys and, you know, kind of seeing where you sit in that space.
So you've been on, I guess, like quite a journey with Kallure, and I know that PR is a really competitive space as well. Like, how do you make sure that Kallure stands out against its competitors, or like, do you see yourself as having competitors or within the space?
Look, we all got competitors, right? There's people in the space that I know would consider me as a competitor, and I've seen it, I feel it, I know. But you know what my thing is that I genuinely believe there's enough space for everybody. And so if I'm being quite frank, I don't really care or look at my competitors per se, because they don't exist to me. Because I'm like, for me, I know what I stand for, I know what my position is, and I know the audience that I want to talk to. So I don't really get caught up. Obviously, you know, like, especially in the first few years of my business, especially through like the F100 program, you have to kind of consider your competitors, what they're doing, kind of what's their price points, how are they positioning themselves, what's their upsell. But for me, I know what differentiates us is that we're social first. Like, we're not profit-led. We're actually social first, like in the sense that we genuinely care about what we're doing. And yeah, I just don't, competitors don't exist to me, darling. I know they're there, but they don't exist.
So you've been featured on BBC Radio London, ITV News, Politics Show, The Evening Standard. Like, what does it mean for you to show up in these spaces and being able to take up space on these platforms?
Do you know, if I'm honest, yeah, like, you're the first person who's asked me this. And I was sitting down thinking to myself, what did it mean to me? And in all honesty, this might sound so cocky, but was that, yeah, I deserve to be in these spaces. We deserve to be in these spaces. Like, this is the thing I want us to stop doing as a community, especially as Black and brown people, is like, stop feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm in the politics show, oh my gosh. Sorry, what are you doing? You know, like, you deserve to be there. Like, you deserve to be in those spaces. You deserve to have those conversations. Like, I feel that often we over perpetuate these institutions as if that they've been, you know, made out of gold by the gods above. Like, honestly, like, for me, don't get me wrong, of course I am so proud. Like, when my uncles, my aunties will sending me the screenshot, like, Shanice, we did watch you on the politics show, man. Like, of course it makes me proud to know that in a family of immigrants, I come from a family of immigrants, and I've accomplished this, and I'm making them proud, and they're so happy to see this. But to say, like, how I feel I deserve it. I think I'm a humanitarian first. So for me, like, to be in those spaces and to be a representative of my community or my people, for me, it makes me proud. but I feel I deserve to be there. So in terms of how I feel, like, I feel blessed, I feel humbled, but I know I deserve to be there. So I'm not going to be like riding this chariot of, oh my gosh, thank you guys so much for placing me in these spaces. More of us need to be in those spaces, let's be honest. Like, if you look at journalism as a whole, the demographic in terms of diversity isn't very diverse in journalism, which is worrying, because then who's telling these stories? The marginalized communities, who are telling these stories? And so I think for me, it's important that we show up and we're in these spaces, but give ourselves a bit more credit.
You mentioned just briefly there about the diversity within journalism. How diverse do you think the advertising marketing industry is as a sector?
Look, let's be honest, all of these industries, they're not amazingly diverse, are they? Like, many of them aren't, especially like the advertising and the marketing world, and predominantly it's quite male driven as well. If you're looking at kind of the advertising space, there's a lot of women making waves at senior levels, but again, it's quite predominantly male led. So how I feel and how I see these industries, I feel like there's always room for growth. There's always room for improvement. I feel like the word diversity has been diluted over the years because people have like oversaturated it so much. So I think that they're using that as an excuse now to kind of run away from the need of diversity. And I feel like a lot of organizations are doing that. You know, we know that with politics that's going on right now, the policies that are coming into place, when you're looking at what's going on across, you know, the US, it's kind of perpetuating decisions within the corporate spaces, and especially across advertising and marketing. And let's be frank, advertising and marketing are one of the most important industries in the world, because you are forming the ideas and the outlook of people's minds and their decisions and their consumer habits and what they want to do. And so I think with the advertising and marketing industry, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, because we need to be careful about some of the things that we are perpetuating. But again, it's a money machine. Let's be frank, it is. Like, brands are paying thousands, if not millions, creating millions of pounds of budget to perpetuate their brand and push it out to particular audiences. And so, yeah, there is a lot of work that could be done and that should be done. But I do see the work that's happening. I feel like there's a lot of things happening that are positive. And I think, like, if we just continue going down that road, we'll continue to see those changes.
Nice. And do you have any advice for brands and agencies in that space, like in terms of when you're saying like they're moving down the road, they can make some changes, like what things do they really need to be thinking about and addressing? Because I know how important community is to you. I know how many partnerships you work on. Is there more they need to be doing, even behind the scenes, not even thinking about the work that they're doing, but the work they need to do as an organisation?
I feel like with brands and agencies, I feel like what we should do more of is have conversations. I think a lot of people are informing decisions on data and like what they're seeing and what that looks like. But I think if we're having kind of like small committees where we're having open conversations and dialogues, we can really create something substantial. And I think that if agencies kind of open up that approach, kind of being more collaborative, not seeing everybody as a competitor, tapping into like another agency to be like, you know what, I know that's your strength, I know that's, you guys smash that, how could we work together to really amplify this? I think, you know, I'd love to see more of that. I don't feel like that happens enough over here in the UK. People say they do, but they don't. I feel as well with like the brands themselves, again, just talking to real people and sometimes shifting away from necessarily just focusing completely just on data. Talking to real people, you'll get real answers. So I feel like if we kind of head down that approach, that would be great, because as we see, AI is taking over the entire world. And you can either look at it as being super scary, or you can see it as a tool to kind of help you. What way you want to look at it is totally up to you. But I think that in that sense, then that means that we need to start being more critical with our thinking, and that happens when you have conversations. So I would love to see more agencies and more brands doing that now. You know, having those conversations, seeing what works, seeing what their audience really wants, not just looking at data. I think that would kind of open up our minds again. I say it like there's a war against the mind. That is what I feel is happening. That's my biggest fear, is that everybody's just becoming super stupid. And I think that
we're letting our brains atrophy for sure. Like, well, not us specifically, but I'm saying as a society using AI.
I don't want to say young people, because I know it's not just them, but it is scary. I've got a lot of nieces and nephews, and some of the conversations I have with them, I sit down sometimes and I think, oh my gosh, what is going on, man? And I just think, wow, is this the road that we're heading down? So yeah, if we could have more analytical conversations and, let's throw some intellect into the mix and start critically thinking. Because I even asked my niece, do you guys do critical debates anymore? Is that a thing that you guys do? Because we done that when we was in college. And she said, no, they don't do that. I said, okay. Because we're living in a society where everybody's kind of either scared to give their opinion or don't want to have those conversations. But yeah, that's my biggest fear in a nutshell, and why I think we, brands and agencies should do that, so that they don't become redundant, because everybody's just going to be using AI to make decisions.
It doesn't really help you when you then have to show up in person, when you have to try and make those connections, when you have to be more authentic. When you're at an event or in front of somebody, you can't say, I'll just hold that thought, let me find out what to say back, what to respond. Let me find that response.
And look, I say it all the time, look, I'm not against it. I think it's a great tool if it's used properly. Like, put it this way, I'm not going to use it to write my press release for me, but I will use it as an editor. Like, I've written my press release, what do you think? What's the strong points? Do you think I need to take that out? And I think it's about your approach of how you do it, but still keeping your human approach. Like, everything I write, I put out online, I've written it. I don't use it as my thing to create what I am doing, because then it's not me anymore. And I think that is what, I just love for us to kind of have these conversations, stimulate our minds, and hopefully it won't be the death of humankind,
Hopefully not. So yeah, my last question was actually going to be, where do you hope to be a year from now? Hopefully humankind is still going to be alive and well, thriving. But yeah, where do you hope to be? Where do you hope, what are your hopes for Kallure in the next year?
My hopes is world domination, but my hopes for next year is successfully executed several campaigns that we're working on at the moment for some clients that we're working with, executing our new event series that I'm excited to announce next year. Just continuing to grow, and I definitely see us being outside of the UK. I would love to win some clients abroad, have the opportunity to travel, and work with people outside of my comfort zone, because that's the only way you'll grow, right? So I feel like for me, I see Kallure beyond the UK, and I dream and hope that happens. And next year I'm going to be very aggressive with my outreach, and you might get sick of seeing me online, darling, but I'm going to do it. So yeah, that is where I'm at.
I can't wait to see it. And then where can people find you online? Obviously they'll be able to see, they'll hopefully probably get in contact with you. There'll be some outreach coming their way, but can people find you on LinkedIn? Has Kallure got a website?
Yeah, so Kallure, we are on LinkedIn, we are on Insta, TikTok, and we've also got a website. In terms of where you can find me, I'm on all the relevant platforms, mostly LinkedIn and Instagram. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.